Hi, everyone. This is Jason Burack of Wall Street for Main Street. Welcome back to another Wall Street for Main Street podcast interview. Today, Dawoud and I are joined by Ross Beaty, who is chairman of Pan American Silver and also executive chairman of Altera Power Corp. Thank you for joining us here today, Ross.
My pleasure.
All right, Ross. Our first topic we'd like to discuss with you is the silver market and what has been happening in the last few months. What is your outlook for the silver market for the next 18 to 24 months? It seems like the price has picked up a little bit before it got knocked down here in the past few months. So could you mind just talking about your outlook for the silver market?
Sure. It's easy to form a bullish view of the next 18 months in silver. I think a lot of the reasons silver's done well in the last few years remain. Silver's demand as money is likely to continue. Governments simply can't stop debasing their paper currency, and gold and silver are beneficiaries of that. And this is not likely to stop anytime soon. What's going on in Europe, what's going on in America, what's going on in Asia continue to support the use of precious metals as a form of money. And so I think demand will continue to be strong in that sector. In addition, I'm not a believer that the world has come to an end. I think the industrial demand for all metals will continue to grow, particularly silver, because silver has so many diverse applications, especially in the digital area where all digital products contain a small amount of silver and cumulatively a lot of silver. Silver has very big applications in some alternative energies like solar power, and it's got other new uses in medical technologies and so forth. So the demand for silver as an industrial metal is strong. The demand for silver as a precious metal is strong. And those bode well for the next number of years.
And Ross, silver is also tough to recycle because it's being used in such small increments, like you said, and so efficiently. And I think they're even working on nano silver and liquid silver applications in a lot of electronics now. It's just going to be very difficult to recycle all of that silver. And once it goes into the landfill, it's almost impossible to get out without silver being, well over a triple-digit price.
Absolutely.
So, one of my questions here is how big of a dislocation do you think there is between the supply-demand fundamentals for the physical silver market and the paper silver market on the commodities exchanges?
I don't really know about that. I've never been a fan of conspiracy theories of people cornering the market for silver on the the paper side. So quite frankly, I can support a strong bullish argument for silver, and I always have been able to, without resorting to manipulation and conspiracy theories and the like. So I just don't know how much of that is going on. I prefer to deal with the physical side and the reality that I can see of people using more and more silver as an alternative to holding paper currencies, and people using more and more silver for thousands and thousands of real applications.
Okay, well, I want to transition to talk about your former company, Pan American Silver, and they just took out Minefinders recently. Do you expect to see more merger and acquisition by gold and silver juniors in the next 18 to 24 months?
Not really. I think you're going to see a steady number, but I doubt that there'll be anything particularly different than we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years. Certain times these things are synergistic and logical, and they happen, but there's a lot of barriers to mergers as well, a lot of social barriers, synergy barriers, and a lot of people just can't seem to execute on these things. This particular one is not yet done. We're hoping it'll be done, but our shareholder votes are next week, and we expect that the votes will be positive, and we'll wrap it up by the end of March or early April. But this particular one took a long time in the making. It took 2 or 3 years to happen, and it was positive for a while, then negative for a while, then back positive. So there's a lot of things that happen when you have ideas of putting companies together, and they often don't get to the finish line. I suspect there'll be the usual reasons that drive these things are companies, generally speaking, are stronger when they're bigger. Size does bring greater diversity, greater financial horsepower, economies of scale, lower overhead costs per unit of production and things like that. And those are generally the reasons that mergers are done. 1 and 1 is often 3, but it's not always 3. Not all mergers work. And I'm hoping that the Minefinders one will be a really positive one for everybody.
Now, Ross, do you think most acquisitions normally take the amount of due diligence that Pan American Silver did with Minefinders, where they take like a 2 to 3 year time frame, or do you think some of them can happen in as little as a month or 2?
Yep, you're absolutely right. Some are very quick and some are very slow, and you cannot predict when you start looking at something how quickly it's going to go. Certainly, Pan American has done a few of these deals over the last 10 years. The company is very cautious, very absolutely focused on how it does these things. It tries to really look at all the risks and all the opportunities carefully, methodically, very measured way, and certainly the Minefinders deal was an example of that. We've done 2 or 3, as I said, of these, and every one has been along those lines. Other companies seem to be able to do them more quickly, but I'm not so sure that there's a particular formula that is ideal. I think everyone has to be looked at on its own merits.
Well, I think one of the major points is that you guys were really able to do this acquisition just from existing cash flow. You guys did this with a very minimal amount of dilution, so I think that's really beneficial long-term for value creation for your shareholders.
Thank you. I'm not so sure I'd agree with you. We are issuing a lot of shares in this deal, but you know, I still think it's a very fair deal for both sides, and it should add up to a much stronger company.
Now, Ross, you're a geologist. Looking back at 10, 20 years ago, is it harder now to find a quality silver deposit than it was a few decades ago?
Oh, brother, that's a hard one to answer quickly. Don't forget, when I started this business in 1994, silver price was $4, between $4 and $5 an ounce, and it stayed that way for the first 8 years of the adventure of Pan American Silver. So what was economic at $4 or $5 an ounce is a very different thing than what's economic today at $30 or $32 an ounce. As the silver price goes up, of course, the lower grade ore bodies become economic that were simply waste rock at lower silver prices. So there are more deposits on Earth that are economic at 30, obviously, than there were economic at $4. Having said that, silver is a very rare metal to find as a primary product, where it's the main value in a mineral deposit. They're very rare. They've always been rare, and they will continue to be rare just naturally. Mother Earth does not create many of these deposits. The ones that do exist are extra valuable because of that. And yet silver is a byproduct metal. Don't forget, 75% of the world's silver comes from gold and copper and lead and zinc mines. And as development of those mines expands, there will be more byproduct production coming out of the ground. And you've got to look at both of those when you try to form a supply balance for silver.
And those are some great points, Ross. And it's just very tough to find, like you said, a pure silver mine where you can mine other metals as byproduct tax credits. And I think you guys took out Aqualine with La Navidad, right? So can you talk about that deposit and talk about some of the other near-term growth catalysts for Pan American Silver in the next 18 to 24 months?
Well, you nailed it on the head. The acquisition by Pan American a couple of years ago of Aqualine to give us 100% of the world's largest undeveloped silver deposit in Argentina, the so-called Navidad deposit, it really gives us the opportunity for transformative growth. I mean, Pan American today is the second largest primary silver mining company in the world. We produce around 23 million ounces of silver every year. And the acquisition of the Navidad deposit, when it is permitted by the Argentine government to be built, which should happen, we think, very soon, i.e., certainly this year and maybe even very, very soon within the next couple of months, has the potential to almost double our existing silver production. So going from 23 million ounces to over 40 million ounces, possibly even close to 50 million ounces after we complete the Minefinders deal, that really will make us the #1 silver company in the world, and really it should also materially increase our cash flow or our income and our leverage to even higher silver prices. It's just going to be a fantastic development. It's a wonderful ore body, and we are really looking forward to the Argentine government supporting this development, as we think they should. Every logic in the book says they should, and they've agreed with that as well. They're just working through the political process now to make it happen, and we hope it happens very soon. So it's one of those deposits. It's really a great ore body. It's in a place that for historical reasons the region hasn't wanted mines to occur in, especially near the touristy areas in the mountains. But that was long before the Navidad deposit was discovered. And what the government's doing right now is zoning the region so that the areas that are suitable for mining can be mined, which is the Navidad area, and areas that are unsuitable for mining, which are these beautiful mountainous areas that are big tourist regions, won't be allowed to be mined. And I think that's a reasonable proposition anywhere. So we look forward to that being opened up for development in 2012, and it will be a real catalytic event for Pan American Silver shareholders.
So you guys are not anticipating any additional geopolitical risk from Argentina. So that Forex transaction tax that was proposed about 8 months ago, which I think turned out to be only like a 1.5% transaction tax that a lot of resource investors, started to panic on. You don't see anything as looking negative about the geopolitical risk in Argentina and how it's increasing?
Argentina has always been a country where I think it has had more potential than has been realized, and this goes back probably 100 years. So we really look forward to the day when the Argentine government will rationalize its laws to accord with more conventional wealth-creating laws that exist elsewhere and allow the country to really develop and blossom as it potentially can. There's lots of things they could do that are worse than exist today, and there's lots of things they can do that are better. And so what eventuates over time, we're just going to have to wait and see. But we have a good mine operating in Argentina right now. It's a high-cost mine because costs in Argentina today are quite high. They've had higher inflation than many of their South American neighbors, and their peso is quite high relative to the dollar. If the peso devalues this year, as we expect it will, that will make our cost structure in Argentina less and less, and that'll be very positive for us. So we hope that'll happen.
Okay, great. Well, I want to transition now to geothermal power and your current company, Altera Power. One of the things I like about Altera Power, other than, you get great management led by you, is that you get a lot of exposure to different part of the alternative energy sector, solar, wind, hydropower, and geothermal. For our listeners out there who are not familiar with geothermal power, can you please summarize what it is and how electricity is generated?
Sure, it's really quite simple. In certain parts of the world, and these are quite restricted areas, wherever you have these plates that dive under one another, and you get lines of volcanoes all around the Pacific Rim, for example, the center of the Atlantic, Mediterranean, anywhere there's a volcano and lots of earthquakes, you have an area that's very, very hot. And if you drill a hole into these hot areas, and there's fluid down there that's extremely hot, this would be 500 degrees Fahrenheit, 600 degrees Fahrenheit, and even higher. You can access that very hot fluid to the surface through the drill hole. As soon as that fluid hits the surface, it expands. You can drive a normal steam turbine with it, generate electricity, then you cool the fluid, repump it back into the ground, and build a system that basically can recycle and go forever. It's a very cool way of generating electricity. It goes 24/7. It's extremely low cost once you have it built. It's very expensive to drill and develop, but once you have it built, these things go for decades and decades and decades at very low cost. It's a great form of low environmental footprint and clean energy. So geothermal is a wonderful technology, but it only exists in very selected places in the world. Some areas, like California, have supported, like Calpine, is great as a true cash cow for Calpine. Calpine produces a lot of geothermal. Northern California Power and Light produces a lot of geothermal. Mid-America Energy, that's owned by Buffett, produces a lot of geothermal in Southern California. So it's an existing energy form that is a tremendous cash cow for the companies that own those great projects. Other parts of the world, though, where we're going to Italy, where there's a lot of geothermal, and Peru and Chile, which have opportunities for geothermal, none currently producing, but they have great opportunities. That's where we're working right now, as well as Nevada, where we have a small operation, and Iceland, where we operate 9% of the country's electricity through ownership of two large producing geothermal plants near the airport there. When you fly into Iceland, there's two geothermal plants that are operating that produce 9% of the country's electricity, and we own 66% of those two plants. So it's a great form of electricity, but last year, Alterra was created through the merger of a pure geothermal company that I had called Magma Energy that I'd started a couple of years earlier, and a wind and hydro company called Plutonic Power. So we merged the two companies because I thought it was great for the Magma shareholders to have the diversification of wind and hydro, and at the same time, the Plutonic shareholders would get the diversification of geothermal. And so what we've built is a company, Altera Power, that is now a significant power producer. We produce a lot of electricity. We have 300 megawatts that we own, and we operate 570 megawatts, which is a lot of power. It's enough to power, say, a mid-sized American city with electricity. And not only those operating plants that give us a very substantial revenue base, income base, earnings, EBITDA base, cash flow base, in other words, we have a lot of growth behind those as well. We have wind growth, solar growth, geothermal growth, and hydro growth. And we're really putting our heads down and trying to double our size right now through execution of these growth plans to build a bigger and stronger company. You know, renewable energy is a great business. The nice thing about it is you don't have to rely on things that are inherently depleting. I mean, we all know there's a lot of gas around the world right now, but ultimately that gas is going to deplete, and not all of it is in the right place to make electricity from. There's a lot of coal, but coal is very polluting, and it also is a depleting business. Same with oil. Same with uranium. The beauty of renewable energy is it's permanent. It doesn't deplete. It goes forever. When you get these plants built and running, they last forever. It's a wonderful business, low cost, substantial cash flow, permanency, low environmental footprint, no emissions. It's a great business. It doesn't work everywhere. If you have low power prices and high costs, it doesn't work. Other places it works great. And so we're trying to build a really big, diversified renewable power or clean energy company that is a real go-to stock for investors who want exposure to that business.
Well, Ross, I think you answered some of our questions here. So I think that was just brilliant. You just went right down all the issues there. I could tell you've had some tough questions posed to you by other financiers.
Well, you know, it's important that our shareholders, who a lot of whom don't really understand what the business is all about, that they understand it simply. And it's not rocket science. This is a utility business. All we do is produce electricity for people to you know, power their lights and industrial consumers to power their businesses. That's all we do. We produce electricity, but we do it in a way that we don't generate emissions. We are building a business that lasts forever. It's a solid business. It doesn't have the swings that the mining business has, because most of our electricity is sold under very long-term contracts, 25 or 30 years. So it's a very predictable business. In some of our operations, you know, I can tell you exactly what our revenue is going to be 25 years from now. And our costs are so low that even if they double or triple, they're still going to give us a wonderful cash margin. So it's a very different business from a business that where gold or silver, for example, you don't even know tomorrow what your revenue is going to be, because the gold price could or silver price could swing up or down, you know, significantly. But with clean energy, you know it's permanent, you know it's clean, you know it's long-term, it's a very sustainable business. We've now built a sustainable company already. We have 6 plants in production. We have the largest wind farm in British Columbia, the largest 2 run-of-river hydro projects and hydro operations in British Columbia, big plants, well managed. We've got good partners on all of the projects. GE is our partner in British Columbia, and we've got a syndicate of Icelandic pension funds as our partners in Iceland. So it's a solid business today. We've got a ton of growth ahead of us. We've got good financial management, strong balance sheet, and tremendous management. So I'm very excited about the potential for Altera in the future.
Is geothermal economic without a subsidy, Ross? Because I know we've just had here in the United States in the last, 2 years, we've had a lot of scandals with some of these solar companies where, you know, they're making technologically inferior panels like Solinger and others. And, you know, as an Austrian school economist, I want to keep the environment healthy, but I also want the economics to be there where there's no subsidy, the company can come out and compete. Yeah,
totally. I couldn't agree more. I've never felt that a business that was based on subsidies that may exist today and not tomorrow is any business to get involved in. These geothermal, like wind and like hydro, and even like solar in certain places, those are perfectly profitable business without subsidies and incentives, in certain places, but you've got to have your costs right. And you've got to go to places where you've got your costs right, you've got your revenues right, and in those areas, build those businesses over the long term. If you don't need subsidies, you can count on them going essentially forever, for decades and decades and decades, hundreds of years. I like that aspect of the business, and I do not believe in subsidies.
Excellent. Yeah, we don't believe in subsidies either. You can see what happened to corn ethanol as well. It drove up the food prices and
that was just outrageous. That should have been allowed to happen. Absolutely outrageous.
And they're still increasing the corn ethanol subsidy too. This is ridiculous, and it's taking food out of the people in the developing world who are marginal consumers of the product. They can't afford the price increase. So it's just saddening.
It's just ridiculous.
I agree. Another question I have about renewable power companies like your companies. Do you think they'll act like a utility companies and give out big dividends in the future?
Yes, 100%. We are absolutely committed to paying a dividend to our shareholders as soon as we can and as large as we can. In fact, we could pay one tomorrow because we have free cash flow in excess of what we need to run our business as a do-nothing business. In other words, if we have no growth that we have to finance, if we just shut everything down, we would be able to pay a dividend tomorrow, a decent yield for our existing shareholders. But we believe recycling that money back into growth is a better way to build future value for our shareholders. So we're not paying a dividend today. But I'm telling you, the sooner we can do so, the happier I'm going to be. It's a very much a core pillar of our strategy over the medium term.
Very, very nice, Ross. And there are a few other geothermal companies. I think the more established one is Ormat, but I don't think they have the growth plans that you guys do. So can you talk about the growth profile that Altera Power has over the next 5 years or so compared to some of its peer group of competing geothermal companies like Ormat or Ram Power or some of the others?
Sure. Well, I don't really want to talk about other companies particularly. Any investor can have a look at those companies, but I can speak to our own growth profile very clearly. What we have in front of us are two types of growth. What I would say is brownfield growth, which means essentially expanding around existing operations. It's relatively low risk. It's much more doable. It's much lower cost because a lot of the infrastructure is in place and so on. And then secondly, long-term growth or greenfields growth, which we would refer to as a pipeline of growth projects. We have a really great pipeline. We have existing brownfield operations. Right next to our existing wind farm, we have another one. The Doki wind farm is our operating one. Doki 2 is a ridge very close by, which is essentially the same size, and we're working very hard on getting that project construction ready by the end of 2012. We have a hydro expansion right next door to our existing hydro plants in British Columbia. And we're working very hard on having that construction ready by the end of this year. We fully expect we're going to have those with the same partner, GE, essentially the same lending syndicate of banks who are lending to our existing project. They're relatively easy projects for us to execute because we have people, we have infrastructure in place, transmissions in place, all set to go. They're very, relatively speaking, easy projects to develop. And then in Iceland, we have an 80-megawatt expansion of one of our power plants there, a 100-megawatt plant. The 80 megawatts would be an expansion right within that existing operation. Again, relatively low risk. We've got to do a power purchase agreement with a user in Iceland. We're working on that right now. But again, we're hoping to have all three of those construction ready by the end of 2012. And what those will have the effect of is almost doubling our production within the next 2 years. So it's a huge amount of growth, a real leg up, a doubling of our cash flow. We're making about $55 million in annual EBITDA. And this would about almost double that. So they're big steps, lots and lots of growth, and it's relatively easy, relatively low risk growth. Over the longer term, we have other projects that we are bringing along slowly as we can develop them. We have geothermal growth in Chile, Peru, and Italy. We have hydro and wind projects in British Columbia and Iceland that we're working on. And we have a new project that we expect to acquire later this year in partnership with GE, which is a solar farm in Ontario. It's one that we already have an agreement to acquire. There's a bunch of conditions that the seller has to meet before we can acquire it, but we've got that lined up to acquire to get us into the solar business. So we have a ton of growth ahead of us. We're executing well. We've got our heads down. We're working hard. We have most of the capital we need to execute the brownfields development. We've got to put some banking arrangements in place, of course. We've got to have some equity. We have most of what we need. We certainly have Iceland looked after. BC, we're still figuring out exactly what the capital cost is going to be and what the numbers look like, and we'll have those numbers settled by later this year. But it's all very doable for us, and we're really working hard on executing that tremendous growth story. We think shareholders will love it. When we get it, it'll increase our cash flow, again allowing us to pay a dividend sooner than later.
Excellent. And I have one final question before we let you go, and that is you spent most of your career mining for base metal and precious metal. Was there a learning curve when you transitioned to the geothermal industry, or were you able to apply?
No, there was definitely a learning curve, and I have to say I'm. It's a school of hard knocks when you do these things. I certainly had a more rose-colored glass on when I was doing the pure geothermal company, Magma Energy. So I've learned a lot about geothermal. It's definitely not nearly as easy a business as I had expected with my rose-colored glasses. But we know that now, and we're dealing with it. We're trying to joint venture some of our risk with third parties and be much more prudent, I think, with how we're exploring. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this business of alternative energy is really, really driven by finance. If you can borrow at 4% or 5% instead of 7 or 8%, and you have to borrow, $500 million to build a plant or two, I mean, 1 or 2% difference in what you borrow is just a massive amount of money, all of which goes to the bottom line. If you can, and you can give to your shareholders if you can borrow at a lower rate. So finance is really important. And therefore, with as I kind of just return right to what I said at the start of this interview, size is really important in this business. The larger a company, the lower your borrowing costs, the lower your cost of capital, the more you can give to your shareholders in value. It's really key. I didn't understand that as well as I do now, but I get it now. We've got a tremendous manager in Altera. The CEO is a very skilled finance executive. And he's doing an awful lot to bridge my own lack of experience in the game. He's been in the renewable energy business all his life, and he's just tremendously helpful to bridge that aspect that I haven't had the background in. The other side of building a company, trying to create wealth for shareholders, whether you're building an energy company or a mining company, those aspects really don't change. It's all about hard work, focus, adequate capital, strong management team, not getting yourself too spread out, all of those things. And whether you're building a silver company or a clean power company, those rules are pretty much the same.
Ross, from what it sounds like, you would anticipate even better project economics as energy prices continue to go higher, as coal, oil, natural gas go up, and then interest rates stay low. So do you anticipate that for Altera?
Every single thing you just said will be a value driver for our company, yes.
All right.
Wow.
Great. Well, thank you, Ross Beaty, for taking your time to come on to our podcast. If people want to find more about your company, where can they go? And if you don't mind, can you give out your ticker symbol as well?
Sure. Altera Power trades in the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol AXY. Pan American Silver, of course, trades under the NASDAQ and the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol PAAS. Further information, we have websites. The website of Altera is alterapower.ca, and for Pan American, it's panamericansilver.com.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming on our podcast. Hopefully we can have you back on in the future.
My pleasure.